and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing and how you cannot do that, but instead can do really meaningful marketing things. And I have a lot of conversations about marketing on a day-to-day basis, and it's the new year, it's 2025, and it seems like a good time to kind of just reflect on what we've been doing and whether or not those things have been serving us in a meaningful way. Yeah, I also feel that there are a lot of people who have kicked off the year exactly with what they were doing last year, which may or may not have been serving them particularly meaningfully, which is why shows like this are so important because it's an opportunity. Every single week, you guys, every single week is an opportunity to just like, okay, whoa there. Is what we're doing really meaningful or is it not? Maybe we could try something new. And today we have a topic that, quite honestly, I don't think is associated often enough with marketing because I think a lot of times from a marketing perspective, we get into this concept of sending stuff out, post things, we like have this one-way communication and we are focused on how much we're creating, how much we're distributing to the world. But what if we took a step back, which is what we're going to do today in the conversation, and talk about how those efforts are actually creating connection with the humans that we really want to connect to. And as you can see, I am joined by a fantastic panel of not just, I mean, quite honestly, we don't have a panel of marketers here today, folks. We have a panel of connectors, which I think is predominantly the importance in. We can get distracted by the concept of marketing things. So today we're going to focus on the concept of connection and how we can extrapolate these concepts into our marketing. But at the end of the day, connection is a human experience. And so we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of human-y type of things today. I'm really excited for all of you to join us. If you are joining us live, we would love to know that you are here and we would love to hear your voice in the chat. So regardless of where you are watching us, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, there's a little chat comment box that allows you to get into the conversation. Oh, hey, Jeremiah. Thanks for getting in the conversation and demonstrating how the comment box works. Let us know that you're here and ask your questions about connections, whether you have had success in doing something and you'd like to share an insight or you have a question or a challenge. I will tell you, this is the group of people to bring it to from a connection point of view. So get into the conversation. The more voices we have in the conversation, the more robust the conversation, and everybody gets to take away more value. So your voice is very important. And we really want you to share it. On that note, as you can see, I have a fantastic panel who are going to share their voices today. Let's learn a little bit more about who these people are before we deep dive into the conversation on creating connection. So I'm going to go by how you guys entered the room. And I'm going to start with Richard. So Richard, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why creating connection is so important for you?
Well, thank you, Tracy, for connecting the connectors on this panel. My name is Richard. I'm based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I came to this connection work because I felt lonely and shy growing up and realized that there's no classes on how do you make friends. We value connection. We're social creatures, and yet we're not taught the skill of how to do that. So I set out to try to find answers. And one of the ways I've done that, I'm a TEDx speaker. I did a talk on how to find excuses to connect. And that's my main philosophy of how we can find excuses to connect in our daily lives. How can we turn it into this habit and mindset of how we live the world? So that's a bit about me. I know Bailey as well, ironically. So there you go. Small world.
Is it because the fact that the connectors are connected is not highly shocking? To me, but I love this concept of the excuses to connect, and I feel like we'll probably come back to that because I feel like, again, very rarely is a marketing conversation focused around creating excuses to connect, but we'll go there after we have met everybody. Bailey, would you like to introduce yourself next, my friend?
I would love to. Thank you for having me, Tracy. Hi, Richard. I'm a connection strategist, speaker, workshop facilitator, and unofficially a professional friend maker. And I empower individuals and teams to build meaningful relationships that lead to aligned opportunities and success without burnout. And I've always been kind of a super connector type. Growing up, I was involved in a ton of different extracurriculars and activities, and I always had a bunch of different friend groups. But what I've come to realize as I've gotten older is I had a lot of like surface level connections growing up. I had a lot of like a wide but not deep network of connections and friends. And only in the last really like 5-ish years, if that, I've started to realize that my own tendencies with perfectionism and people pleasing, and turns out a sprinkle of neurodiversity, have kept me from building really deep, authentic relationships with people. And I know Richard because he was on my podcast, Seeking the Overlap. I believe you're episode 5, you're 4 or 5. And it was actually in conversation with Richard that the perfectionism angle came to me. When he and I were chatting, I was like, holy crap, I have been putting up barriers to really letting people truly get to know me. So my work in the last even 6 months has shifted to this deeper connection with self and others framework. And I think it applies in every facet of our lives, whether it's in our personal lives with our families or our best friends or our significant others and children, and professionally, whether you're a salesperson or biz dev or a marketer who's trying to better connect with potential customers and clients. You really can't do that until you know who you are on the inside. So that's been my focus as of late, and just so excited to have this conversation with you all.
Oh man, Bailey. I mean, every time I talk to you, I know like you and I just like literally could talk for an entire
I know.
day.
Our overlap is a circle. Our Venn diagram is just one circle.
But it's like, okay, I'm going to say that too, because I could we're going to you guys, I don't even know how long this conversation is going to be. Strap in because it's going to be a good one. Okay, Bailey, great to have you as always. And last but not least, Talisha, back again.
Well, hello everyone. I'm excited to meet everyone. I don't know Richard or Bailey, but I'm sure we're going to get really acquainted during this conversation. My name is Talisha Joseph. I am the founder and CEO of The Official Glue, and essentially we help individuals master the art of networking so that they can get on the yes side of their business. I have done a lot of things in my life. And one of the things that I recognize during this journey is that we struggle with connection. I love what Richard said, there's no class on how to make friends, or there's honestly no class on how to make business partners. And so I'm really focused on the business end of connection and how we can make reciprocal relationships within that space so that we all get what we want and we can all get more yeses in the middle.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to reference this book quickly because before I forget it. But has anybody else on the panel read the book Relationship Economics? Okay, if you haven't, read it. Because the concept of the book is just like a very interesting read from a connection point of view, because it's based on like what's the business value, what's the economics that are related to relationships, and at the beginning of a relationship comes the connection. And so it just ties into, I think, everything you were saying, Talisha, is that a lot of times we don't really associate the concepts together. We think that like, oh, someone told us that, or it feels good to have friends. Yeah, it feels good to have friends. And then people like Bailey and I went through this journey as well, right? Like, oh, I have a lot of just like very surface level friends. Is that really serving me? And all of these things. So anyway, book takeaway for everybody who's listening, relationship economics. Okay, quick hi to everyone else who's popped into the chat. So Islam, always great to see you. I care, also great to see you and your long comments, filling up the comments box. Remember also to share your experiences about creating connection or your questions about creating connection. Specifically, if you are looking at like, how do I do this in a more business marketing perspective? We're going to harness some of the beginning part of this conversation into those types of things as we move through. So please share your questions. We'd love to hear them. Okay. I do want to go into the excuses to connect component, but I think we should start with this surface level versus deep connection, because from a marketing point of view, I would say that almost always we're talking about a surface level of connection. And so, Bailey, I want to come to you first because you brought this up, but two, you're like recently been going through this realization of kind of like what's the difference between a surface level connection and a deeper relationship. So what are some of those things that you noticed in your journey that other people might be able to relate to in terms of, oh, maybe I'm not going that deep?
I think it's that universal feeling of feeling alone in a crowded room, whether you're actually in a crowded room or you're on the internet, surrounded by people and access to anybody almost on the planet. It's this weird disconnect of feeling like, why do I still have this lonely feeling even when I'm surrounded by others? And this in real life can look like having a lot of friends, but not feeling like anybody really sees you or gets you. And generally, I find that it starts with you. It starts with how much of yourself you have shown them, how authentic you have been in your interactions with them, how honest you've been about the things that you care about your interests, about your goals, about your values. And this translates to businesses as well. Businesses have interests, goals, and values. And I think a lot of times with marketing, we're trying to talk to many people, first of all. Like we're trying to catch everybody. And we all know that that doesn't actually really move the needle. When you're trying to speak to everyone, you speak to no one. So, from my perspective, what I've realized is so much of my life, I was showing up as whoever I thought the person I was talking to wanted me to be. Like I was morphing myself into a person that I thought would be likable to the person I was talking to. And look, there's highs and lows to all of these things that we do, right? Like that's not a bad thing, right? It's good to make somebody feel safe and comfortable with you because you're presenting something that feels familiar to them. But again, we're all guessing as well. So what you're doing when you're doing that approach versus just showing up as whoever you actually are is you're making a lot of assumptions. You could be wrong. And the only thing you really know for sure is who you actually are. And that does take some introspection because not everybody does know who they are, turns out. And you may know who you were 10 years ago or even as a teenager, and you might just not have updated yourself on what your interests, goals, and values are recently. So a lot of my work now is shifting towards making sure that I have time for self-reflection. I have time to really get to know myself intimately so that when I meet new people at this point, I can present the parts of me that are the truest and most current and most relevant. And I think the relevancy piece is what I was trying to achieve with like the morphing into what I thought they wanted. Now it's less shape shifting and it's more, okay, here's who I am. Okay, let me use my Venn diagram example. So my business is called Overlap Collective. My podcast is called Seeking the Overlap, and it is all about finding the overlap on the Venn diagram between you and the other people's circle. So this part is where you're really sitting in your own circle. Before you're crossing over with anybody else, what is in your circle? And from a business perspective, this is like, who are we? What are our values? What's our mission? Like, who is our person that we're trying to serve here? What is in their circle? And then in your marketing messaging, you can just be speaking directly to that person because you so know what is in that individual circle and what's in your circle. And that helps them feel seen. We've all felt that where we're like, oh my God, are they spying on me? Like, what? This is written for me. Holy crap. That's what you want, obviously. And so, yeah, it's been very interesting to come to this conclusion that perhaps I've been not fully transparent with all of the people that I've been meeting, and none of it was with ill intent. It was truly as a means of not being rejected and wanting to be loved and seen at the end of the day. So, It's, I think, going to be a lifelong thing, but sure glad I figured it out at 40 and not 80.
Right? Progress. But this is also, I mean, this is why I love having conversations like this, because like everything you just said is relevant for a business, right?
Mhm.
Your circle is your brand. And this concept, if we extrapolate the concept of seeking the overlap from a marketing perspective, instead of selling to or a lot of other things that people might be thinking about from a marketing point of view, telling, educating, that's a big one I hear, is that like we're educating the market. um we could talk about it. But this kind of like, are we seeking the overlap? I think if most marketing departments there today just like took 5 minutes to ask themselves which of these activities are seeking the overlap between us and our ideal clients, I would guess in general it's going to be a small percentage of the activities that are doing that, because there isn't any intention. It won't happen by happenstance, right? The intention has to be there. And Talisha, I'd love to ask you, because you, as part of your introduction, you were talking about like this more business focused perspective on that. How do you see some of these concepts of like either seeking the overlap or the depth you need to go from a business relationship point of view? Because I also think there's a lot of narrative around like you don't want to go too deep, and then how deep is too deep? Is it not deep enough? Where do we go from there?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the business relationship, I think we can go as deep as we want to go. I don't think it's a matter of how deep are we going, it's how wide our scope is. So, what are we bringing into these professional or more business savvy conversations? We're bringing a lot of topics into the conversation, which gives that listener a wide perspective. And honestly, most of the time it's harmful because we're not narrowing in on a subject matter to discuss deeply. So it becomes a matter of we need to go deeper in the initial contact. Why aren't we going deep? But we don't need to go so wide. And I think that's where we are getting a little confused. I think when we talk about all this authenticity and transparency and vulnerability and all of these and lovely words, those are wide words. Those are wide words. And instead, we need to focus on a topic and go deep into that topic at the point of contact. I think we're waiting. We want to go wide. We want to give a variety of conversations. We want to tell people about our husbands and our pets and our children. And then there's not enough time to talk about why we were really here in the first place. We want to make a deal. We want to know what you have. We want to know what your interests are, what your business values are, what's going on with your business, what is your professional scope. We want to know all of those topics, but we run out of time. So we need to focus on what we came for and go deep into that part. And then maybe the next conversation, we can open up another level of conversation. And then the next one, we can open up another level of conversation. And I think the reward of all of this is when you start with the focused idea, the reward is the relationship, because now we have reasons to reconnect for different topics. If we try to give everybody everything at one point, we kind of are saturating. You know how you put too much dressing on your salad? You see your face? That's exactly what happens, right? That's exactly
soggy lettuce. No one likes it.
Too much dressing on our salad. We're sogging out the conversation. And honestly, we're repelling that connection because no one wants to come back to a soggy salad.
It's true. It's why nobody takes like leftover Caesar salad home to eat the next day, because it's too soggy. No one wants to eat that. I think I'd love to hear your perspective on this, like levels of conversation piece, Richard, because I feel like there's a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on the like first contact, but really connection relationships are built over multiple contacts. And so if we don't necessarily take the intention out, because we still have this intention of creating connection, but we give ourselves more time to make those, because I can't in a 30-minute coffee chat, I can't build a whole relationship with the person. I can start a relationship with the person. And so what does it look like to start that instead of put like all the pressure on this needs to manifest in this individual connection point?
Yeah, great question. And I love hearing all the different perspectives so far. One word I wanted to focus on was context. I know Bailey started bringing it up when she mentioned relevancy, and Talisha, you were mentioning that too. It's like, what are we here to talk about? I think context is such an important element that we tend to miss. My word for 2025 is mastery. I've been very curious as to what does masterful communication look like. I think part of that is being able to pick up on what type of person is it that you're talking to, because there are some people that are very outcome oriented and would rather you be direct and not talk about like ooey gooey soft things. It's like, what are we here for? Let's talk about numbers and like hard facts and outcome, otherwise you're wasting my time. So if I pick up that that's the type of person I'm talking to, then I'm going to, as a masterful communicator, adjust the way I approach that. But if I send someone else that's very into like feelings and storytelling and like, let's talk about our families and kids and dreams, then I'm going to lean more into that, because that is the common ground or ingredient that's going to allow us to connect. So I think that context is really important. And your question around like, sometimes it takes time to build connections. There's this fascinating study done where nowadays we know this as the 36 questions to fall in love, like this series of questions that you can ask each other and supposedly you fall in love. This is derived from a study where they were trying to explore, like, if we put two strangers in a room together, is there a way to design it so that they can leave with meaningful connection in a relatively short amount of time? And what they found is, yes, they can do that. But one of the most important components is that it's reciprocal. One of the variations of the study that they had done is like they came up with a list of questions, but only one participant was asking the other individual, and that individual is answering. And what they found is like it's very one-sided. It needs this back and forth of both people answering those list of 36 questions, because there's this gradual vulnerability of like, I've shared a story, I've taken a bit of a risk, and now we feel like we're connected. And the reason why it's called 36 questions to fall in love is some of those research participants ended up falling in love. That was their initial interaction. So I think it can be both. It can be, you can intentionally design for connection to occur quicker, or I guess foster the conditions where it can occur quicker, but it's also like planting a seed. And seeds need time to sprout. It needs to be in the right conditions before it really, blossoms. So both are needed. It's like, how can you be the gardener of your connections? How can you put the right fertilizer and sunlight and water for it to flourish? Yeah. So that's in my perspective.
I love that you used a gardening framework, and simply because I think in that context, we are the sprout. So going back to what Bailey is like, watering yourself allows you to be a pretty mature plant going into new soil. And when we think about it in that context, then how important is it for you to know your values, your morals, your character? Because now you know where to plant yourself. So part of even networking strategies are really developing where should you plant yourself. And I think that's probably an area that needs more investigation, because if we don't know where we need to be or where we will be the most productive in the space, then we're showing up. And honestly, people are putting too much water on our plant. And then we get to the space where Bailey's like, well, we go there and we feel lonely, we feel disconnected, we feel like nobody's listening because we're just not in the right environment. And maybe we need to move. So I think it's really important not only to know where you're going, but what you're bringing to that table too is important. And I think sometimes we're told that what we're bringing to the table doesn't really matter, because we've heard over and over and over again in this concept of connection, it's service led, serve. But the real question is, okay, how is it serving you? And if we can't answer that question, then we're putting ourselves into harm's way.
Yeah, can I add to that? That's first of all, my keynote uses the whole garden analogy. So same page, but Talisha, that concept of you being a plant versus the gardener is so fascinating. And so my framework is called the 3 C's: community, connection, collaboration. And the community piece is really where you go to find your people, right? And that's what soil are you putting yourself in, right? Does it have the right sun exposure? Does it have the right nutrients in the soil for you? Not everybody, but you. And so a lot of like that next step after you really identify what's in your circle, it's now where do I go to find people that are likely to share a lot of those interests, goals, and values that I've just identified so that I can then grow my network, grow my community with aligned humans, because the alignment and the overlap is what leads to connection, which then leads to collaboration. And to that point, yes, of course, you want to serve, you want to give before you ask, you want to make deposits before you withdraw. Yes. And if you're not getting anything back from those relationships, they're still one-sided. It's just you're the one that's losing. And the thing that I have to remind my clients all the time is those 3 C's are of equal importance and value. So yes, you need to find the people, you need to connect with the people, but then the collaborate part, that is the giving and the receiving, the asks and the gives, the reciprocation. And I think that too often we build relationships that are very uneven. And that's okay. Every relationship's gonna it's unlikely that they're all gonna be balanced. That's normal. We're all people and we're ever changing. But you're aiming for reciprocal relationships. And that's where that collaboration piece comes in. It's the leveraging, right? I talk about build, nurture, leverage to succeed at all the things, do whatever it is you're trying to do in life and work. And if you're not also welcoming in support from your people, you're missing a huge component of those 3 C's, and you're not allowing those other people to support you back. Richard, did we talk about this on our episode 2 about the helper's high?
Yes.
We did. Yeah. Of like people get like high, they get really gratified from being able to support the people in their lives. And so we often think it's like a take. It's really not. Like we benefit, and we benefit when we support other people too. So yeah, so many good points, guys. You're smart.
Man. Okay, and I want to come back to this concept of reciprocity, mostly because from a marketing perspective, I would say that a lot of marketing isn't based on reciprocity, even though if we are like very specifically even looking at like an engagement or a comment or something on the post, that is an indicator of reciprocity, right? I give you this, you give me something back. But very rarely are we actually like intentionally going out to the world to create reciprocity. And so I'd love to hear what you guys think every relationship, every connection really is a one-to-one. So what can we learn about that from a potential one-to-many something we're trying to create from a marketing point of view? What can we take away?
Well, I think I like what you're saying here, because I feel like we think that relationships are one-to-one. Somewhere in this idea, we're dealing with one person and you and I are making a connection, but that truly is a concept that we have to get rid of, because we're always in one-to-many conversations, right? And if we really did think about it, that we're always in a one-to-many, our conversations would be a little bit more deep, because we need to be able to plant seeds in you so that you can spread out this information to your many network, right? So we're always in a one-to-many. And I think this is where communication kind of breaks, because we're only thinking about how we could talk to Tracy or how we can talk to Bailey, but we're not thinking about how Bailey's going to communicate what we shared with her entire community. So this is a really interesting concept, because this is where the digital space comes in, and why we're having so much conflict when it comes to networking digitally. It's difficult because we want to have these one-to-one conversations. We're looking for someone in the comment to relate to what we said, right? When we should have more open, spread out conversations and really think about how are we talking to the general public in this, and how are we positioning ourselves to be relatable to the general public, because we need you to share what we're saying to the general public. So we have to have more general conversations that go deep.
Deep yet general. I like this point too, because like I keep coming back to the circle from a branding perspective, right? Like if I was very clear from a corporate brand point of view that this is my circle, this is what I'm here to do, these are my intentions, these are the stands I'm going to take, these are the types of conversations I want to have, even like using this platform as an example with a panel, right? Like we're not actually having a one-on-one conversation or a one-on-one relationship. We are building a mosaic by being in conversation together, by having new ideas and thoughts based on other parts of the conversation. And there's a huge potential for marketing to contribute from that point of view, or for any individual who's even building relationships. If you want to extrapolate this to sales or customer service or other business types of relationships you might be building. But I feel like this is kind of the thing, right? Like it's like we carry around these frameworks and we don't even know that we're carrying them around. Right? And then all of a sudden somebody is like, oh, what if we were never actually having a one-on-one conversation? What if we were always having a one-to-many? What might that look like? But then I'd also like to like bring this back to you, Richard, from this concept of like, if I'm coming from a place as an individual where like maybe historically I felt lonely or I felt disconnected, that feels like a big jump in terms of mindsets. Just be like, that's fine. Just pretend you're talking one to many all the time. So like, what are your thoughts in that arena?
Yeah, that could be a huge jump because it might add a lot of this pressure now. Like, oh my God, if I talk to this one person and then they're going to talk to me about their friend, like talk to their friends about me. And then how's this going to this message going to spread?
Right.
Yeah, this is such a fascinating conversation. I guess on the individual perspective, as a few people have mentioned now, like self-connection is so important because then it actually gives you the stability and confidence. Like, this is me, this is how I'm going to show up. And I don't really care how other people view me or what their opinion is. And if it is that aspect of social anxiety or loneliness, there's a lot of efficacy when it comes to, let's say, exposure therapy. That same type of concept can be applied to social connection, because how can you gradually expose yourself to, like, I'm going to say hi to the barista. I'm going to text an existing friend and ask them for coffee. So you're exercising that social skill so that gradually that fear goes away. But if you jump way too quick, like from 0 to 100, then that's not going to be sustainable for you. On your topic before around like, how do you take reciprocity, which is typically more a one-on-one thing, to something that's more one-to-many? I do think in terms of like, what is it that leaders do? Like, how is it that there can be like visionary leaders or campaigns, whether it's in business or politics? How is it that so many people can rally against or behind one person, and then they feel part of that community? I don't know. That's just a thought that came up. That's like, that to me seems like it's both one to many, but all those people as part of that community also feel connected to that particular ideology or party or tribe or whatever you want to call it. So I find that fascinating.
Like for me,
it's unified value, right? It's like when we all kind of, I think even in this concept, right? Tracy has interviewed many people. And I think we all want to come into her community because we all have a unified value. She values connection. We value connection. The other people that she's talked to value connection. This is one of her top values, connection. So in this community, we all have the align. I love that word because that's my word of the year, align. We all have the aligned common ground of connection. So we're willing, and willingness plays a part of this too, because we're all willing to come to the table and have a very cordial conversation about our views on connection. And then the magic starts to happen, right? Because then we'll say, oh, well, Talisha and Bailey had really, really aligned views. We start niching down because we're getting closer, right? So we start to niche down because we widen up. And I think in marketing, we tell people to niche down first and then widen in that very small container. Well, there's not enough room for you to grow in the niching, because you have to get out in a wide perspective, go into the wide, big world and see what kind of things can come up for you. And when you go out into the world, bring your values along with you so that you can find valuable connections and conversations, so that you can be a part of those conversations and then see where alignment starts to add up. I think we're working a little backwards in marketing. So that's my perspective on that, Richard. Like, I think it's just a matter of, in a leadership, we have one vision, and it's really important as a leader that you have a vision. We have values, really strong core values. We bring that to the marketplace, and then we allow the market to decide if they align with what we're bringing. I think what Bailey was saying earlier about the shape shifting and morphing of the market is trying to fit my box. And it's like, it wants to be more in alignment with me. And it's like, why are you trying to be in alignment with me so hard? Let me decide if I like what you're bringing. Let me make the decision if I want to go there, because I'm one individual in this world. I'm not the whole world. And if you leave the decision up to me, I'm more inclined to be willing to buy what you're producing, or willing to participate in that conversation, or willing to sit down at the table with you. But when you try to force feed me something or create a false narrative around something, it's difficult for me to get on board with that narrative.
Well, and I think there's a lot of things I think that are coming together in this point, because Richard, you talked about how you might show up differently in different scenarios. There's a way different people consume information. One of the things I always say is that, like, if I'm showing up on the playground with my 6-year-old, I probably look a little bit different than I do at a black tie gala. But that doesn't mean I'm different. And so if you have that clarity from a self-awareness point of view, and extrapolate this to a company point of view too, the self-awareness of who we are as a business, then authenticity, or as how I see authenticity anyway, is based on me showing up how I would show up in that scenario. Doesn't mean I would show up the same in every scenario, but it's that I'm deciding based on my values how I show up that way. And I do think, to tie this to what you were saying, Talisha, is that, like, so often we're actually out in the market trying to convince people of something, trying to convince you to believe what I believe. You should believe what I believe. And alignment actually exists when you already believe what I believe. And I'm out in the market saying what I believe. And then you're like, oh, we have the same ideas. This is great. I'll start listening to you. I'll start following you. Maybe I'll come on your show because we all believe in connection. And I've, like, demonstrated to each of you, I think, hopefully, that I care about connection. And so when I asked you to come be on the show, you're like, yes, I will do that because you believe at the same level I believe that this is important. And so therefore we can talk about it. I think, to tie this back to what you were saying, Richard, about the leader, is that there are I'm going to reference something that Bailey's probably going to be mad about, but, like, there are leaders in the world right now who say and do a lot of things that a lot of people don't agree with. Yet seemingly there are also a lot of people who are like, yes, you know what you're talking about. And it's curious because when you're not aligned with that idea, you're just like, look, what is happening here? Right? Like, what is happening? But those people are like very effectively being themselves. And there is like a thing that attracts specific people, aligned people, to those people. It will never attract not aligned people to them. I think all of you probably know who I'm talking about at this point, but we'll not reference names. In business, very rarely do people take that strong of a stand because it is divisive. There are people that will never ever be aligned with that way of being a human. Yet it attracts the people. And so from a marketing perspective, it's like it's interesting to me as like a case study, because I feel like the stronger of a stand you can take, the faster you can find your people. But for people who do care about like people feeling seen, people feeling heard, like I actually want all people to feel seen and heard, but therefore I don't take as strong of a stand because like I don't want to leave people out because this is a personal value of mine. Then we don't create that kind of strength in our position, if we want to say it that way. And therefore we also like increase the amount of time it takes for people to create that alignment with us. So I just wanted to put that out there because it felt like it like kind of attached all the pieces that we were dropping.
I mean, my question to that would be, why do you think it's on you to make everybody feel seen? It's not.
I mean, you can't.
I wish I had a blowhorn right now.
Right? Like that's a lot of responsibility, Tracy. You're never going to make everybody feel seen. And like, you know, for better or worse, the person that will be taking office next week, like is hyper clear on their positioning. They're hyper clear on making their followers feel seen and feel heard. And it did what they came to do, right? And so I think that that's important to remember, that nobody is for everybody, period. And you see this happen with, you know, new businesses a lot of the time. Like they're trying to be everything to everybody. They're trying to not leave anybody out. And I've done this over and over and over because I'm with you. I am with you. I hate people not feeling like my content is for them or my work is for them, but it's just not. And I will tell you, you know, the more honest I have been on social media about my thoughts and my values and my feelings on things and my interests, right? Like the more me I can show up as, since my business is me, right? I'm a speaker and a workshop facilitator who teaches her own frameworks and structures and concepts. So when people hire me, they're not really hiring me for those things. They're hiring me because they feel like, oh, she's somebody that I like, that I trust, that I feel aligned with. And the more I can show them what is in my circle on the Venn diagram between the two of us, or the me to many, the more they're able to say, oh, okay, I like those things. I have this overlap with her. I trust her. And I've been an entrepreneur on and off since end of 2016, literally like 2 weeks before he won the first time. So there's a weird parallel going on here for me. And back then, you know, I was just trying to fit all the boxes, and it didn't do anything for me, right? So I think that there is this level of responsibility you have to lay down, that you are the one that is meant for everybody to feel seen by, because there are billions of other people out in the world that can make people feel any level of seen and heard and, you know, supported. So the more we can show up for our specific people, the better we're going to actually be able to show up for our specific people.
I would even change that last statement and say the more we can show up for ourselves, the more available we are for people to find us. Because it's like,
you can't control other people.
You're not trying to show up for everybody, right? I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm like, my content is so selfish. It really is. It is for me, by me, curated in my perspective, and those who are in alignment with it, get with it. If you don't, scroll by it. That's it.
Wow.
Simple.
Best of luck.
If it's not for you, it's not for you. See ya. I hope you find what you're looking for.
Mhm.
But it honestly, it you know, and I love. I'm going to take us back to the garden because I authored in a book, and my segment was all about like anxiety. And I had a really bad anxiety attack, like in transition. And we know that transitioning in anything is scary. And most of us have probably experienced an anxiety attack in a transition because they just are scary. You don't know what you're going into. So when I transitioned into entrepreneurship, a really bad anxiety attack. I was at a job that I couldn't take anymore, and I quit my job. And I had no money, I had no plan, I had nothing. I was just like, I can't do this. And so it caused me to have an anxiety attack. Years later, I authored a book. And when I was given the task to write, I was like, what am I going to write about? And it just came to me, this is what you should probably share. And then it came to me to share it in this framework of the garden. So I had to do some research, right? Because you don't share information that you know nothing about without doing your market research. So I did some research. And all of this to say that part of this is part of the gardening process. Before you can even plant seeds in the garden, you got to irrigate your soil. You cannot plant seeds in a garden that the soil is not irrigated. So the irrigating process is a sifting through. You got to sift through. You got to fluff the ground a little bit. You got to find the nutrition in the ground, and you have to pull that stuff to the top first, right? So there is a sifting process that happens in gardening. And somewhere in this world, we're like, well, we don't need to do that step. The sifting part, not our job. Like, we're just going to start planting seeds, and we're never going to sift. We're just going to plant. That's what we want to do, right? We don't ever want to get our hands dirty and dig in the ground and see what we're working with. We just want to plant seeds in the ground and then manifest all these things and get to the harvest real quick. But the first step is the sifting. And how that relates to this is when you show up authentically you, and you are selfish in some context about how you're showing up and not really being interested in how everyone else is going to receive your show, then you are sifting. You're allowing the market to kind of sort out itself without your help. This is the way that you keep your hands off the dirt. You don't have to touch it. Let them get dirty. Let them figure out what they're going to do. You just keep doing what you're going to do and let them figure out, because they will sort it out. I work with clients all the time who have large followings on social media. And then when we start working together, the numbers start to drop. I'll tell you why, because now you're getting a little bit more clear on who you are, and you're bringing you to the table, and the people who are not aligned with you are falling off. They're falling off, which is a great thing, because now your numbers are going to increase. Your interest level is increasing. Your engagement is increasing. Everything is building up with the shedding of those people who are not there for you in the first place. They were there for the false narrative, the things that you were curating just so they could be there. We have to get out of this curating so they can come and really just show up and let the people who are interested stay. Because the people who are interested will stay. The people who are not will fall off.
Air horn back.
Yeah, Talisha, I love how passionate you are in the way that you speak.
It's true.
But
I mean,
think again, from like a business point of view, again, if you were going to like look at your marketing efforts and take a look at like how many of these are quote unquote planting seed activities and how many of these are sifting the soil activities, probably not a lot. Like we're like, I gotta be, and I like, these are things I hear all the time, right? I gotta be on every platform. I gotta post everywhere because it's like, where are my clients, right? Like I have to go and find, what are we doing to like curate a place to nurture, like to create soil that people want to plant themselves in, but also not because I'm guessing what nutrients someone else needs in their soil. I'm saying like, this is what we do here. We create nitrogenated soil. I don't know that much about gardening. I don't even know if that's the thing. We're creating this specific type of soil, which is very good if you're this specific type of plant. But if you're not, I mean, I live in Canada. You cannot grow a palm tree. You can't grow a palm tree outside. Well, in Calgary.
Yep.
Maybe in some, I don't know. Maybe it's possible in some parts of Canada. Definitely not in Calgary. In a greenhouse, maybe. Outside, no. It's just not a thing. You can't grow. So we don't, right? We don't grow those kinds of trees. We grow different kinds of trees. And when we look at nature, it seems like pretty self-explanatory, right? Like certain environments can have certain things grow successfully. And
Wait, Tracy, before you go on, I have to use this analogy because you
Okay.
teed it up perfectly. So palm trees are also not native to Los Angeles, in case anybody's not aware of that. They were brought here about 100 years ago, and they have about a 100-year lifespan. So LA, back in the 20s, planted tons of palm trees. That's what people think of when they think of Los Angeles. And we're on a ticking time bomb here of those palm trees starting to just drop dead and fall over. Okay. So even if you can do it, even if you can make a palm tree grow, even if you can actually successfully keep them alive for their lifespan, they're still going to eventually fall over and die, unlike a tree that's native here that could live for thousands of years. So, yes, it might work for a period of time, but it will not work forever. So, maybe just cut your losses and plant things that are native there, or only invite plants that can thrive there in the first place instead of wasting your time ultimately down the road.
Oh, this is such a good
Or
call
get
out
into
to
the import and export, right? It's like, this is why. I mean, we're talking about connection and we go into like the planting. This is why we have an import and exporting system, because we understand that all plants are native to all lands, but we all can enjoy the food. We don't have to be selfish in that. We could share. And I think when we bring it into a connection space, what you said, we take so much ownership of our circle. This is our circle. These are my people. And it's like, bruh, since when are people your property? These are not your people. These are all everybody's people. We all get to share. And honestly, if you can help with exporting some of that insight and sharing out some of that stuff, the reciprocity in creating advocacy and advocating for your circle so that you can spread out that circle a little bit more and give us a little bit more of the wealth, then we don't have to fight so hard. But we're fighting because we want to own it. We want to take ownership of it. We want to say, these are my people. I don't want to share people. I don't want to share community. I don't want to, I found this good person. Can nobody have them? I can't tell you how many times our clients are like, I'm not telling anybody about you because I want to keep you all to myself. And I'm like, so you want to pay me forever? That's right. That's what you're saying. You want to pay me forever because if you don't want to share me, I can't get paid.
That's scarcity mindset too, right?
It is
collaboration over competition, y'all.
We have to learn the skill of quality collaborations.
Yeah.
And that's where reciprocity comes in, right? Exactly. Because it doesn't make sense to collaborate with someone who's not going to be reciprocal in that collaboration. So we have to be mindful of also including reciprocity in our strategies and not only saying, well, let's connect because you have something that I can do something for you. Well, what can you do for me? So that we know right here, right now, how we're going to export and import and exchange and really keep the circle moving. A stagnant circle ain't nothing. A moving circle creates momentum, and then we get widespread connections.
Oh man, I don't know if any of you guys looked at the time, but like, time. Oh, it is Gordon. I see you. Quality over quantity. I think you heard Felicia just say that as well. I wanted to also call out this like piece on sustainability that you hinted to, Bailey, about the palm trees, right? Like these palm trees in this environment are eventually going to die, and not just one of them, because we planted a whole bunch over a whole bunch of different time periods. They're all going to die all at once. And then what does that do to our flora and fauna situation? I believe that the most effective marketing programs are sustainable. We don't just like make an investment today and this is going to be good for today, but 100 years from now, this is not going to be good. Like, what are we thinking about from a sustainability point of view. And what is more sustainable than what Talisha you went in is to actually creating like my thing that is part of the ecosystem of things, right? It's not just my thing. It's not my people. My people are connected to other people. We all have, I mean, what you said even at the beginning, Bailey, and like, yes, there's depth things we need to take into consideration, but many of us are connected in many different places, right? And that is good. That keeps information flowing, it keeps money flowing, it keeps economies going, it keeps businesses in business, right? These are good things. So how are you like owning your identity as a palm tree, owning your space as a palm tree, but also saying like palm trees are meant for everywhere, right? Like I'm living this space and I'm gonna own. I don't feel like I want to use the word own anymore now that Alicia went on her rant about owning, but like this is my role, and it's critical to the success of the ecosystem that I do this component, but I don't have to do all components. I don't have to be the tree that's responsible for like maintaining the soil in every different part of the earth. I just need to do it here. And then like I can go and appreciate a palm tree, but I can also go and appreciate a fern tree or a fir tree, because there's like different things I like at different times. I think what we very effectively did here today, folks, was open a can of worms on connection and the potential that a conversation like this has in the marketing arena. So before we run out of time, I do want to do just like one more like round of final thoughts with all of you guys. So try to, I don't know, I don't think we can actually guarantee we're not going to strike a new idea because we've demonstrated that this is kind of what we do here. But last final thoughts on creating connection. If anybody is looking at this show, and we've dropped a lot of really great ideas, what is the takeaway that you would recommend for people, knowing that, hey, how might we try this in our marketing is what people might be looking for?
I think the big takeaway for me is the fact that you are never speaking to one person, right? And that's why my whole little spiel is like creating relationships and connections that lead to aligned opportunities and success without burnout. It's because if I connect with Talisha and we vibe, and I'm clear about what's in my circle, and I'm clear about the soil in which I thrive best and the kind of soil in which other people might thrive, then now Talisha can go and spread that word on my behalf. She can be a referral. She can be a megaphone for me. And that's where the collaboration piece comes in, and vice versa. So I'd say the key takeaway with that concept of leveraging your relationships as a means to open doors to opportunities for yourself or your business is having that clarity of who you are, what you do, who you serve, what you bring to the world, so that it's really easy for somebody to speak your name in rooms that you're not in.
Amen.
I will try to eloquently summarize and synthesize everything we've been talking about. I think there's this theme around, I really love this last point you made, Tracy, around like, who are we? Like, what is our role? We are each our own unique type of tree in the world, and it's discovering what kind of tree we are, and also knowing who are we as well. Like, how are we in the environment or ecosystem in relation to all these other beings that we share this planet with? So it's both getting to know ourselves and getting to know others, and where we can thrive and where we can best support one another. And yeah, it brings into like, we are interconnected, we support one another, and it's okay for us to be selfish as well. It doesn't have to be either or, it's these ands. And there's a question I came across in one of the masterminds I'm part of, and we were talking about legacy. Because oftentimes we think about, what's our 10-year plan or 20-year plan, or what do we want to do before we die? And then someone posed the question of like, what's your 1,000-year plan? And I'm like, that's such a fascinating question, because it literally means like, how is it that you plan something that will last beyond your lifetime? That is legacy. Like, what's your 1,000-year plan? So I guess I'll leave with that existential question for folks.
Oh, I think this is so good. And before I go to Talisha, I just have to share this because I think it's a story brand exercise, but I'm sure there's other organizations that do it too, is like the eulogy, right? Like, what do you want people to say about you at your celebration of life? And like for me, I like always come back to like there was more authenticity in the world because Tracy was here. And it's like even interesting in that fact because that doesn't speak to a specific who, it doesn't speak to a specific how, it doesn't speak to a specific what. It just is like the story. And so then if we are using that as like an anchor to come back to and say like how could my who's, how could my what's, how could my how's attach to that story. There's some like interesting directions then that can take you. But it's cool to say like if that's the tree, right? If that's your tree, a lot of people will call it your why, right? If that's your tree, then hey, maybe it can be planted in Los Angeles for 100 years. Do I want it to be planted in Los Angeles for 100 years? Maybe not. Maybe after the fires, we need some more plants of any kind. So you never know. But like, there's always opportunity. Like, there's always opportunities, and when you find that alignment, and it does start with you, then I think there are also, like you said, Bailey, so many aligned opportunities that can manifest from that. Okay, final thoughts from Talisha, and then we're wrapping it up. I promise.
Oh boy, the pressure is really on to keep this very succinct and short. Well, I do have one thing I have to say about these trees and the 100-year thing, because I think it's really important when we come to in the Grids of Connection. There is nothing wrong with the palm tree being in California for 100 years. But I think when we get to the 99th year, we need to uproot it. We don't need to allow it to fall down and die. Just uproot the tree, right? Hire someone to dig out those roots and take the tree out so it doesn't cause so much catastrophe, right? And I think this is what happens with relationships. We just allow them to fall over and die instead of being responsible and uprooting it and saying, hey, you know what? We're in a transition. We're in a new season. You and I probably aren't as aligned as we used to be, but I think I have somewhere else that you can be planted. And the person that you are now will probably grow exponentially here. You just have reached your capacity with me. This is okay to have these conversations. I think we're afraid to have conversations that actually matter. And so we're creating more catastrophe than we are good in the world when it comes to this conversational connection piece, right? And then when it comes to what you were saying about, I love the idea. I'm a reciprocity builder. This is what I do in business. Like when you talked about, knowing who you are, that's only the beginning. Now we have to start playing poker a little bit and knowing what cards we have to shift around and transfer. How do we keep the ace in our pocket and play those when we are in really high value situations where now we could pull out our best and give it away? We have to really think strategically when it comes to the way that we connecting and communicating with individuals. If we want to get the best out of people, we have to start thinking about how we're treating people. And if we can't think, like really use our brain and think about how we're treating people, we're creating more casualties than we are connections. So the thing that I would take away from this conversation is don't be another casualty out here. Really think about how you can create meaningful connections that might only last 100 years. But when it's time to go, you have to have the conversation and release people so that they can go and be fruitful and marry somewhere else where they will just be so happy and joyous somewhere else. Don't own people. Let them be free. Let them grow. Let them go.
Well, and I think the other thing, like, this plays directly into your brand's reputation as well, right? Like, I think when we're trying to like hoard whatever it is, resources, people, clients, what have you, it's like you said, Bailey, it's a scarcity mindset. And when you can be like, I would actually have a referral partner who I let go as a client because I was like, this isn't the right thing for you, right? Like, this isn't what you need right now. I know we like each other, and I know like you wanted to just like have me help you, but like, I don't have what you need here. I think this person has what you need here. And like, why don't you have a conversation with them? And then like, we can talk about it. And then they were like so successful with that person I referred them to that they're like, oh my God, you always need to talk to Tracy. Like this, there's a brand reputation component that manifests in the world when you have these intentions of creating connection and taking care of things and being mindful about when does this relationship evolve. Let's not say expire, but it's going to evolve into something else. And that's okay. And allow the permission to exist there. And like something that I find like so personally fulfilling, where you ended there, Talisha, is that like Talisha and I met 4 years ago. And we did the Permission to Do You Bonanza 2021. And then I don't even think we had a conversation for like 2 years, 2.5 years after that. And then whatever, universe got us back into this conversation. And then we were like, oh my God, we're so in the same conversation here. But like, this is what happens to humans is that like, there's peaks and valleys of relationships. And it doesn't mean that it's not meaningful or that it's the wrong time or that you have to convince or any of these things. It's just like a natural evolution that allows connection to add value. And if we create space for that, then I think everybody wins. Okay, friends, we could literally keep talking about this all day. But we're going to let everybody go for now. Maybe we come back and do a follow-up episode. I Care saying wants to be friends with Bailey. So on that note, and I say this,
I want to be friends with Bailey too.
Guys, I want to be friends with all of you. You're my people.
And Richard, I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to answer that question because I love that question. But this was great.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Tracy, for making the connection.
Yeah, thank you.
If anybody else wants to answer Richard's question in the comment, I would highly recommend it. The 1,000-year question. Go for it. I'm sure we'd all be super curious about what you have to say. But also, like, if creating connection is something that's important to you, you ended up in this space today for a reason. Don't let this be the last conversation you're in about creating connection. Connect with Bailey. Tell her to start. Well, now she knows because I popped your comment up. But like, connect with each other. Connect with each other in the comments. Connect with all of these wonderful people are tagged in the post for this episode on LinkedIn. So you can just click on their name and easily find them that way. Use this as part of your practice for creating connection. There's a great group of people to practice with in terms of connection. And don't let this be the last conversation. Stay in the conversation with us, stay in the conversation with each other, explore your own thoughts, explore your 1,000 years, explore your palm tree. I mean, there were a lot of things we talked about today. So like,
we love a metaphor.
Oh man, I should have tried to count how many metaphors we were using today. There's a lot. I mean, mostly the garden. But this is it's an opportunity for you to explore from a different perspective, whether it is your marketing, which I would love people to explore more. How are we creating connection and for what intentions behind that from a marketing point of view, but from any point of view. There were like so many amazing points of view dropped today. Just like take some time, take it away, ask yourself the question. Have you ever tried to answer that question before? If not, you're probably going to learn something from taking some time to explore it. So thank you so much, Talisha, Richard, and Bailey for like everything you shared today. I always know when I'm in conversation with any of you, and it was like even more explosive as a group. There's going to be so many ideas to take away and try on. So thank you so much for coming and bringing that with you today, because there is no way that someone can't take a new perspective out of the conversation today because of what you shared. And I am very grateful for that. To I Care, Gordon, Jeremiah, Lindsay, Islam, who are in the comments, thank you so much for joining us. So, like, it's always so great to see your LinkedIn faces and hear all the wonderful comments that you have. For those of you who didn't get in the comments, it's available anytime you want to come. And if you're watching the replay, get in the comments too. That's fine on replay. You can also do that on replay. And we would love to see your comments coming in there as well. With that, everybody, thank you so much for sharing our time together today. And until next time, permission to do you.